Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the Savage Nation. This is a very somber speech tonight from my desk, not from the Oval Office. I have no Oval Office. I've only my little desk, my little world. I said I would go on, and then I realized that I'm being shadow blocked by Twitter. Normally, we get 15, 20, 30,000 people listen to any one of my performances or discussions or speeches. Tonight it was 10. They cut it to 10. Some vermin from the third world that he hired for $12 an hour cut it to 10. Democracy is dead. And this was a setup. The whole thing was a setup from the beginning to the end. From the beginning to the end. From the beginning to the end. So at times like this, and many of you don't want to hear it, I wish I could make the camera do a better job. Maybe put it like this. I'm alone tonight. I have no staff. Tomorrow will be my second podcast of the week. And believe me, it'll be the best you've ever heard in your life. And not only will cover the Georgia debacle of the election being stolen there, what happened there is something that you will not understand for the next 5 years. I understood it right away. Tonight was a setup. So let me back up for a minute. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I strengthen thee, I help thee, I uphold thee with my victorious right hand. Isaiah 41:10. You say, well, what the hell does Isaiah have to do with it? And your sons and daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. I know that you don't believe any of this anymore. Isaiah 1:5, he wrote, the whole head is sick, and the whole heart faint. These ancient Hebrew prophets, foresaw the world that we are living in. You wouldn't know it listening to Anderson Cooper, that degenerate piece of human offal, or the others on CNN who provoked this tonight. For years, they called you every name under the sun. First, she started, the she witch, deplorable, untouchable, unwashable, demented, every name under the sun. Putting down white males, white no good, whiteness no good. And then the devil wins, Warnock in Georgia, who built his whole career on hating white people. This is a descendant of Louis Farrakhan, is now in the U.S. Senate. The people went crazy today in Washington. You say, well, who did it? Who provoked this? Was it the right thing to do? No, it was the wrong thing to do, because it will have the opposite effect of what the crowd wanted it to have, which is exactly why it shouldn't have happened. This is the problem. They've already taken away our right to assembly. They're now going to take away, or they're going to try to take away, the next bunches of our rights. And so where do we go from here? Do we turn to the Bible? Some will, and I will. The opening of thy words giveth light. It giveth understanding unto the simple. I opened wide my mouth and panted, for I longed for thy commandments. In times like this, listen to me, even the most lost amongst you, think back, because it's not 2 generations in your past, no matter how smart you think you are, no matter how progressive you think you are. It's not 2 generations ago that you had religious grandparents. They were smarter than you. They were better than you. They produced your parents, and then your parents produced you, and you produced nothing. All you did was shoot your load into a napkin. All that sex you had and no children. You know why? Because you're lower than a dog. Most of you leftists are lower than a dog. A dog has progeny. And God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. Genesis 1:27. You hear that? Male and female created he them. Just the other day, the she witch, Pelosi, said there is no he, there is no she, there is no father, there is no mother. She thinks she was God. And you wonder why the walls were breached today? Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, the young woman shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Isaiah 14. I know much of this is unreal to most of you. I get it. It sounds like hocus pocus from ancient times. The wisdom of the prudent is to look well to his way, but the folly of fools is deceit. Proverbs 14:8. This is all from God, Faith, and Reason. I don't need you to buy my book. I'm way past needing you to buy any of my books, but I will refer to Stop Mass Hysteria. Very important for you to understand this. But more important than Stop Mass Hysteria is a little known book that was written by someone a few years ago in 2014 called A Time for War. No, that wasn't it. I'm sorry, that's the novel. Great novel. That's not the one. It was called Stop the Coming Civil War. Published in 2014, written in 2013. I don't want to go into it right now. But I'm going to read you the opening to Stop Mass Hysteria. This book is dedicated to the men and women of law enforcement who are on the front lines protecting the rest of us from the violent, radical left-wing street criminals whose goal is to tear our society into pieces. Who wrote that? Me. When was it published? I don't know when it was published. I don't know the year. Stop Mass Hysteria, a couple of years ago. The books are over. 2018. I tried my best. Warnock is a disciple of Louis Farrakhan. Look what someone just wrote, from God, Faith, and Reason to God, Faith, and Treason. So I want to read you some of my tweets tonight before I say goodnight, because tomorrow's a podcast day. I'm doing Mondays and Thursdays on the Savage Nation podcast. Today I did a television show on a little-known network, JCTV, a Jewish network that wants to go into the news business, and they created a show just for me called Savage's News. And you could watch it if you'd like. It's pretty damn good. It's a preview of what's coming tomorrow on the podcast. I'm going to read you some of my tweets and then say goodnight. Okay, so let's start with John Voight's tweet last night. John is a wonderful man, and he says, "It gives me great joy to announce to everyone Michael Savage is premiering his new show, Savage's News, on Jewish Life Television, JLTV, Wednesday, January 6th at 6 p.m. Eastern on DirecTV channel 325-1. You should watch it." John loved the show. His partners love the show, and they're from Hollywood, and they know what's what. So 7 hours ago, I tweeted the following. So the left now sees what the right can do. The media, Antifa, BLM provoked this. Enough is enough. I had not yet been shadow blocked. I then said, how many in the DC mob are agents provocateurs? And Antifa, BLM, other leftists waving flags, carrying Trump signs. We don't know. But we do know what agents provocateurs can do. Many of you never heard the phrase. Many of you are political wizards. You know what agents provocateurs are. That's the enemy's camp, travels within your camp, and does bad things to make your camp look bad. You're telling me half of those rioters were not Antifa? Just logic would dictate that they were. There was a movie in the 60s called Z, set in Greece. Oh, you got to watch that one. So how many in this mob were agents provocateurs? How many? I don't know. That would be something for legitimate investigative agencies to discover. Here's something interesting. Earlier I tweeted, DC democracy protesters are labeled terrorists, rioters. I call them democracy protesters. If they were doing this in Hong Kong when China was trying to take over, they'd be called democracy protesters, wouldn't they? And even that degenerate pervert on CNN would have to say, well, they were marching for democracy. Labeled terrorists by the same media salenterates. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, who call violent BLM Antifa peaceful protesters. They called the people in Washington, 99% of whom were democracy protesters today, exercising their right to address their grievances to the offices of the so-called lawmakers, who are really mostly lawbreakers and grifters and gangsters. And then what happened today? A D.C. cop executed an unarmed woman Trump supporter. Unarmed woman protester, I tweeted 2 hours ago, killed by an M4 machine gun. It's a military-grade weapon of war. Many of you don't understand that she was executed by a cop in D.C. Now, I said the same cops who would not even fire beanbags at BLM as they were burning a church executed this woman who turns out to be a 14-year U.S. Air Force veteran. Okay? And they used an M4 machine gun on her. She was unarmed. Are you listening to me? Forget what the Trump lost, moron. Take a walk. Throw yourself on the third rail. The D.C. cop killed the unarmed woman protester with what looks like an M4 machine gun. It is a military-grade weapon of war. That cop should be tried for murder, homicide. She had no gun. She was standing by a wall. She's a 14-year U.S. Air Force veteran. Why did he execute her? Because he's a punk and a coward and a murderer. And by the way, many of you don't even know, an M4, you can pull one shot or you can make it auto, semi-auto, single shot. Ask anyone in the military. This was an execution. Imagine if she was a black woman, God forbid, and she had just tripped and fallen and broken a hangnail. Oh! Anderson Cooper would have had another baby. Wolf Blitzer would have delivered another Blintz. The same cops who would not even fire beanbags at BLM as they were burning that church that Trump was married in, by the way, killed this woman. So there's not much more for me to say right now other than what I'm saying. All I know is I'm being shadow banned on Twitter as I speak. Very few of you are allowed to hear and see me. It's their website. They can do what they want. If you want to see me unfiltered, as long as it lasts, the podcasts work. The Savage Nation podcast. People, we're in this to the end. We're in this to the end. She is a white woman, a veteran, and she was executed by a cop. Who did this? And by the way, we found something for you before I sign off tonight that you have to see. We put it on michaelsavage.com. My assistant was shocked by what he found. He found that just before she was killed, one of the wonderful DC police, whatever they're called, was trampling on an American flag. Let's see if it's up on the Savage Nation website. Mike, here it is. Got it. michaelsavage.com. So on the top of it is Ashley Babbitt, the 14-year U.S. Air Force veteran capitally shot in the back. Most of you have seen that tragic story. The cop should be arrested for homicide. This is the George Floyd job. He killed her. He executed her, the punk, coward, vermin. Now go down on michaelsavage.com. Earlier, a police officer was stomping on the American flag on the U.S. Capitol steps. They were provoking the crowd. Instagram dropped it because that's owned by Mark Zuckerberg. So you have to understand something here. We've lost freedom of association. We've lost freedom of the press. When Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg, and the one with the sweater up there in Washington and the Google people are more powerful than the president and the entire Congress together, tell me what we have. A media dictatorship. Media dictatorship. But the cop trampled on the flag and someone tried to stop him. They provoked the crowd. You know what that's like? That's like waving a flag, a red flag in front of a bull. It's on earlier. A police officer was stomping an American flag on the U.S. Capitol step. It has been dropped from Instagram. You can't find it anymore. But it was on michaelsavage.com. They didn't call out the National Guard when they were burning churches, threatening to breach the White House walls. And now they're calling for Trump to be arrested. Biden is calling it sedition. New York Post is saying it's an invasion of the Capitol. What happened in Georgia, though? You forgot that already? The two communists were escalated into the Senate to control the Senate. You forgot who that is? You forgot him, the African-American guy? Oh, I said African-American. I forget. That's sacred. Warnock's not just an African-American, man. He's Louis Farrakhan with a white collar with a red soul. Warnock is Louis Farrakhan with a white collar and a red soul. We have his speeches. He hates the police. He hates the military. He hates white people. He hates America. Remember Reverend Wright? Reverend Wright and Reverend Warnock are blood brothers. There's so much more to tell you about Georgia tomorrow and about the riots and who provoked it and what this is all about. Fox News is finished. They're gone. I know what happened. I saw them all turn on the crowds. Even the most loyal supporter of Trump over these years has turned on him. And that was Michael Goodwin, who said Trump is responsible for this day of infamy in America. Michael Goodwin was told in no uncertain terms by the Murdoch boys, you write this or you're out, you'll lose a job. So he did what he had to do to survive. Trump is not responsible for this day of infamy. You could say he is. It's easy to say that. But that's not what happened here. You could blame Nancy Pelosi. You can blame Adam Schiff. You can blame all the vermin who attacked us day and night for the last 4 years, called us every name under the sun. Most of the crowd were white people. They had had enough. They snapped. They couldn't take anymore. It's just the beginning, not the end. What you have seen today, unfortunately, is not the end of what's coming. I tried to warn you in 2014. I wrote it in 2013. You laughed at me. It was a bestseller on the New York Times list. Fine, great. And I dedicated it to the police. I'll close with the dedication again. This book is dedicated to the men and women of law enforcement who are on the front lines protecting the rest of us from the violent, radical, left-wing street criminals whose goal is to tear our society into pieces. Did you listen to me? You didn't even hear about the book because I'm banned on Fox News. I'll close with the opening. We've reached a new mass hysteria inflection point, I wrote. Hatred is in the air, I wrote. We are living in an age of hate in which mental pollution is worse than air pollution. The most accessible and comprehensive of all unifying agents, hatred is spreading like a virus into all too willing hosts. It unifies knee-jerk liberals no matter what their other differences. Hatred of conservatives, hatred of Trump, hatred of Trump's voters is one of the many cases of mass hysteria infecting American society today, but it is likely the most destructive. I saw what was coming. I was asked today on Jewish television, how did you write prophetic words like this? Are you a prophet? I said, no, I'm not a prophet, but anyone who writes prophetic words and say that they're not descended from prophets is lying to you. We all have DNA. Our DNA goes back to certain people. Some of us have descended from certain people. Some of us have been blessed with the descendants from certain people. And we can be rejected. Rocks can be thrown at us. We can be called names under the sun. It's okay. It's okay. What happens now? Study Cambodia. You will see what occasional cortex has in mind for you. You will see what occasional cortex and the others foisted upon us in these last few years have in store for us. Thank you for listening. God bless America. God save America. And remember, please, tomorrow, the Savage Nation podcast, where I cover in detail some of what I started tonight. Thank you for listening. Good night.